While my mother-in-law gushed over which Hermes scarf would look best on my husband's mistress, I was in my car outside the boutique, on the phone with American Express, reporting fraudulent activity on an account that bore my name alone. She believed the platinum card in her wallet was a symbol of her son's success, oblivious to the fact that every swipe, every transaction, every indulgent purchase was funded by the wife she treated like hired help. By the time their shopping bags hit the marble counter, the card reader would flash a humiliating word: declined. My revenge wasn't loud or dramatic, it was precise, calculated, and absolutely devastating. And the best part? They would never see it coming. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 10,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Please subscribe to DR Revenge Stories, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Also, drop a like on this video, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from viewers all around the world. Now, let's get into the story. My name is Emma Hartley, and if you had walked into my home on any given Tuesday evening, you would have assumed I was living the American dream. The brownstone in Boston's Back Bay neighborhood was a masterpiece of historic architecture, with its original crown molding, restored hardwood floors, and windows that overlooked the tree-lined streets where old money whispered its secrets. Inside, the air always smelled of fresh flowers, peonies in the spring, gardenias in the summer, arranged in crystal vases by the housekeeper I paid but never received credit for hiring. The kitchen was a showpiece of marble countertops and state-of-the-art appliances, the kind featured in Architectural Digest spreads, with captions like, "Where classic meets contemporary." The Sub-Zero refrigerator was always stocked with organic produce from Whole Foods, imported cheeses from the North End, and sparkling water in glass bottles, because Patricia, my mother-in-law, insisted that plastic was pedestrian. On this particular Tuesday, I was in that very kitchen, my hands dusted with flour, rolling out dough for the apple galette my mother-in-law had requested. And by requested, I mean commanded with the subtle tyranny only a woman who'd never been told no could master. "Emma, darling," she had said during Sunday brunch at the country club, not looking up from her Cobb salad, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light as she speared a piece of avocado. "I do hope you'll make that French apple tart for Thursday's garden party. You know, the one you made last year? It was quite charming. Rustic, really. Very cottagecore." The way she said cottagecore made it sound like a communicable disease, something you'd catch from shopping at farmers markets or wearing linen. I had smiled, the same practiced smile I'd perfected over 7 years of marriage, and nodded. "Of course, Patricia. I'd be happy to." What I didn't say was that Thursday's garden party was being held at my house, in my garden, with my Wedgwood china, my Belgian linens, and my catering budget. I hadn't been consulted about hosting it. Patricia had simply announced it to her bridge club, and by the time I heard about it, invitations had already been mailed on cream-colored cardstock with my address embossed in gold. This was the rhythm of my life with the Hartleys. I provided the venue, the funds, and the labor. They provided the guest list and took the credit. Now, as I carefully arranged thin slices of Granny Smith apples in perfect concentric circles, trying to achieve the effortless elegance that Patricia would inevitably critique, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was face up, and the notification made my heart skip a beat. Amex alert. Card ending in 7834, transaction $847 at Saks Fifth Avenue. I paused mid-slice, the knife hovering over the cutting board. The card ending in 7834 was Patricia's supplementary card, one of 3 I had issued on my primary American Express account when Jonathan and I first got married. "She'll need it for household expenses," Jonathan had said, as if his 62-year-old mother, who owned a condo in Beacon Hill and a summer house in Nantucket, needed financial assistance. But I had agreed because that's what you did when you married into a family like the Hartleys. You accommodated, you facilitated, you enabled. Patricia shopped at Saks regularly, too regularly, but $847 at 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon seemed excessive, even for her. Usually her purchases were strategic, a designer handbag before a charity gala, a new cocktail dress before the symphony season opener. This felt different, random, impulsive. I wiped my hands on the apron and picked up the phone, opening the Amex Alert app. My account loaded, showing the familiar dashboard of transactions, rewards points, and spending summaries. I navigated to the recent activity and found the Saks charge. Merchant, Saks Fifth Avenue, Boston. Time, 2:27 p.m. Amount, $847. Category, women's apparel. I frowned. Patricia had told me this morning, over coffee in my kitchen while I was preparing breakfast, that she was having lunch with her bridge club at the country club. The conversation had been brief, her tone dismissive as always. "Just the usual ladies," she'd said, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror and adjusting her pearl earrings. "Francine, Louise, and that dreadful Barbara who always overbids. We're discussing the holiday charity auction." Saks Fifth Avenue wasn't near the country club. It wasn't near her Beacon Hill condo either. It was downtown in the shopping district, a solid 20-minute drive from anywhere Patricia had claimed she'd be. A small, cold knot of suspicion began to form in my stomach. I told myself I was being paranoid. Patricia probably finished lunch early and decided to do some shopping. It wasn't unusual, it wasn't suspicious, but something made me open the location services on our family plan. Jonathan and I shared our locations with each other, a remnant from the early days of our marriage when we were actually interested in each other's whereabouts. Over the years, I'd stopped checking it. There was no point. Jonathan's dot was always in one of three places: the office, the gym, or home. But today, curiosity overrode habit. I opened the app and waited for the map to load. There was my blue dot, stationary at our brownstone, and there, downtown, was Patricia's dot, Saks Fifth Avenue. My finger hovered over the screen. Then, almost against my will, I zoomed out slightly to check Jonathan's location. My breath caught in my throat. Jonathan's blue dot was overlapping with Patricia's. They were both at Saks Fifth Avenue, together. I stared at the screen, my mind racing through possibilities, trying to construct an innocent explanation that would make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe Jonathan had left work early. Maybe he'd run into his mother by coincidence. Maybe they were shopping for a gift. My birthday was next month, after all. But even as I constructed these flimsy narratives, I knew they didn't hold water. Jonathan never left work early. He was a corporate attorney at one of Boston's most prestigious firms, and he wore his billable hours like a badge of honor. He'd told me just this morning, as he straightened his tie and grabbed his briefcase, that he had back-to-back meetings until at least 6 p.m. "Don't wait up for dinner," he'd said, kissing me on the forehead with the mechanical affection of a man checking off a task on a to-do list. "I'll probably just grab something at the office." And yet, here he was, at 2:30 in the afternoon, at Saks Fifth Avenue with his mother, while I was at home making the apple galette she'd demanded. The knot in my stomach tightened, morphing from suspicion into something darker and more certain. I set the phone down on the counter and looked at the half-finished galette. The apple slices were already starting to oxidize, their edges turning brown despite the lemon juice I'd brushed over them. I didn't finish rolling the dough. I didn't brush the crust with egg wash. I didn't sprinkle it with turbinado sugar the way the recipe instructed. Instead, I untied my apron, draped it over the back of a chair, grabbed my car keys from the hook by the front door, and walked out of my house. The 12-minute drive to Saks Fifth Avenue felt both endless and instantaneous. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, and I could feel my pulse thrumming in my temples. I didn't let myself think. I didn't let myself imagine what I might find. I simply drove, my mind blank and buzzing at the same time, like a television tuned to a dead channel. The valet at Saks knew me by name. I'd been shopping there for years, ever since Jonathan and I got married, and I needed to upgrade my wardrobe to match the expectations of a Hartley wife. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Hartley," the young man in the burgundy vest said as I pulled up in my black Mercedes. "Doing some shopping today?" I handed him the keys without answering and walked through the brass-framed revolving doors into the cool, perfumed sanctuary of the first floor. The smell hit me immediately, a calculated blend of expensive fragrances, leather, and wealth. It was a smell designed to make you feel like you belonged to an exclusive club, even as you handed over your credit card for a handbag that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I didn't pause at the cosmetics counter, where a sales associate tried to catch my eye with a sample of the latest Tom Ford fragrance. I didn't stop at the handbag display, where a limited edition Chanel quilted bag sat in a glass case like a museum artifact. I went straight to the escalator and rode it up to the third floor, women's contemporary apparel, where my phone's tracking app told me Patricia and Jonathan were still standing. The escalator rose slowly, each mechanical step stretching the moment into something surreal. I watched the second floor slide past, shoes, accessories, lingerie, and tried to steady my breathing. Maybe I'm wrong, I told myself. Maybe there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. But when I stepped off the escalator onto the third floor, I heard her before I saw her. Patricia's voice carried across the department like a crystal bell at a garden party, high and performative, designed to be overheard. She was laughing, that particular laugh she used when she wanted everyone within earshot to know she was having the most delightful time. I followed the sound, my heels silent on the plush carpet, weaving through racks of designer clothes and circular displays of cashmere scarves in autumn colors. And then I saw them. Patricia was standing in front of a three-way mirror, holding up a silk blouse in a shade of emerald green that probably cost more than the average person's weekly paycheck. The fabric shimmered under the boutique lighting, catching the light like water. But Patricia wasn't modeling the blouse herself. She was holding it up for someone else. Next to her, twirling in front of the mirror in a cream-colored Max Mara coat that I recognized from the window display downstairs, was a woman I had never seen before. She was young, mid-20s at most, with the kind of effortless beauty that comes from good genes, expensive skincare, and the arrogance of youth. Her dark hair cascaded over her shoulders in glossy waves that looked professionally blown out. She had high cheekbones, full lips, and the kind of figure that looked good in everything. She was stunning in a way that made my chest tighten. But what made my blood run cold wasn't the woman herself. It was my husband standing behind her. Jonathan was smiling at her, his hand resting casually, possessively on the small of her back. Not the polite, distracted smile he gave me when I asked about his day, not the tight, professional smile he used with clients. This was a real smile, warm, genuine, intimate. It was the smile he used to give me back when we were dating, before the wedding, before the mortgage and the expectations and the slow death of whatever we'd once had. I hadn't seen that smile in years. "Oh, Natalie," Patricia cooed, adjusting the blouse against the young woman's shoulder. "This color is absolutely divine on you. It brings out your eyes. Doesn't it, Jonathan?" "It's perfect," Jonathan said, his voice warm and easy. "You should definitely get it." Natalie. Her name was Natalie. I stood frozen behind a circular display of cashmere scarves, partially hidden, watching the scene unfold like a spectator at a play I hadn't bought tickets for. Patricia reached into her Hermes Birkin bag, a bag I had purchased for her 2 Christmases ago, and pulled out a black card. My black card. The supplementary American Express ending in 7834. "Put it all on this," Patricia said, handing the card to the sales associate hovering nearby with a tablet and a professional smile. The associate, a polished woman in her 40s wearing all black and tasteful gold jewelry, took the card with a reverent nod. Of course, Mrs. Hartley. I'll ring everything up for you. I watched as Natalie beamed at Patricia, then turned to Jonathan with a look of such genuine affection that I felt something crack inside my chest. Your mom is so generous, Natalie said, her voice sweet and slightly odd, like a child on Christmas morning. Jonathan laughed, the sound rich and unguarded. She has excellent taste. Patricia positively glowed under the praise. Well, darling, she said, reaching out to adjust the collar of the Max Mara coat on Natalie's shoulders, when you're going to be part of the family, we have to make sure you're properly outfitted. A Hartley woman has a certain standard to uphold. The words landed like a physical blow. Part of the family. A Hartley woman. The room tilted slightly. I reached out and gripped the edge of the scarf display to steady myself, my fingernails digging into the polished wood. They weren't just shopping together. Patricia wasn't just enabling her son's affair. She was actively welcoming this woman into the family, into my place. The sales associate returned, holding two large Saks shopping bags with crisp tissue paper blooming from the tops. All set, Mrs. Hartley? Your total came to $2,847. Would you like these sent or will you take them with you? We'll take them, Patricia said breezily, as if she'd just purchased a cup of coffee. $2,847 on my credit card for my husband's mistress. The sales associate handed the bags to Natalie, who accepted them with a delighted squeal. Thank you so much, Mrs. Hartley. You didn't have to do all this. Nonsense, Patricia said, waving her hand dismissively. It's my pleasure. Now, let's go look at shoes. I saw the most darling pair of Manolos downstairs that would be perfect for the opera next week. Jonathan, you're still able to get those box seats, aren't you? Already done, Jonathan said, his hand still resting on Natalie's back as they started walking toward the elevator. They moved as a unit, the three of them, laughing and chatting like old friends, like family. Patricia in her Chanel suit and pearls, playing the gracious matriarch. Jonathan in his tailored Tom Ford, playing the devoted son and attentive lover. And Natalie, glowing and beautiful, playing the ingenue who'd won the lottery. I stood there, invisible, watching my husband and my mother-in-law shop for his mistress with my money. In that moment, something fundamental shifted inside me. I wasn't sad. The heartbreak would come later, in private, when I had the luxury of falling apart. Right now, I was something else entirely. Cold, analytical, precise. I pulled out my phone and opened the American Express app with steady hands. I navigated to the Manage Cards section and pulled up the list of supplementary cards attached to my primary account. There were three: Patricia Hartley, card ending in 7834, Jonathan Hartley, card ending in 6392, Jonathan Hartley, corporate, card ending in 5518. My thumb hovered on the screen for only a moment, then I tapped on Patricia's card. Report card as lost or stolen. A confirmation dialog appeared. Are you sure you want to report this card as lost or stolen? This action will immediately deactivate the card and prevent any future transactions. I tapped confirm. Another message appeared. Your card has been deactivated for security purposes. Would you like us to send a replacement card to the address on file? I selected Do Not Send Replacement. Then I went one step further. I tapped on the transaction history and flagged the most recent Saks purchase for $2,847 as fraudulent. This transaction appears suspicious. Would you like to dispute this charge? I tapped Yes, dispute charge. The system prompted me. For your security, we recommend freezing all supplementary accounts while we investigate this potential fraud. Would you like to proceed? I didn't hesitate. I tapped Freeze all supplementary accounts. Within seconds, a confirmation screen appeared. All supplementary cards have been temporarily frozen pending fraud investigation. The primary cardholder will be contacted within 24 to 48 hours. Thank you for protecting your account. I took a screenshot of the confirmation and slipped my phone back into my purse.
Then I turned my heel and walked back to the escalator, descending through the layers of luxury goods and false promises, past the handbags and the cosmetics and the jewelry that sparkled like broken dreams. The valet brought my car around. I tipped him $20, more than Patricia had ever tipped anyone in her life, and drove home with my hands steady on the wheel and my mind already 3 steps ahead. By the time I pulled into the driveway of my brownstone, I had already made 4 phone calls. One to my attorney, Margaret Chen, a shark in Armani who specialized in high net worth divorces. One to my financial advisor, David Kwan, who managed my investment portfolio and would help me separate my assets from Jonathan's. One to my accountant, asking for a complete audit of every joint account, every shared expense, every dollar that had Jonathan or Patricia's name attached to it, and one to a private investigator named Sarah Mitchell, who came highly recommended by a colleague at my hedge fund and who specialized in cases of marital infidelity. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't throw things or drink wine straight from the bottle or do any of the things women in movies did when they discovered their husbands were cheating. Instead, I walked into my kitchen, looked at the abandoned apple galot with its oxidized fruit and unfinished crust, and threw the entire thing in the garbage. Then I poured myself a glass of water, sat down at my laptop, and began to methodically dismantle the financial empire that Patricia and Jonathan believed belonged to them. The war hadn't started with confrontation or tears. It had started with a single tap on a screen. And Patricia Hartley, with her supplementary platinum card and her delusions of dynasty, had absolutely no idea that her entire world was about to collapse.
The next morning, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to the sound of my alarm and the absence of Jonathan's breathing beside me. For 7 years, I'd woken up to the sound of him, his snoring, his sleep talking, the rustle of sheets as he reached for his phone to check work emails before his eyes were fully open. This morning, the silence was profound. I lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling and mentally running through the checklist I'd created last night before crying myself to sleep. Day 1 priority list. 1. Freeze joint credit cards. Completed yesterday. 2. Meet with attorney Margaret Chen, 9 a.m. appointment. 3. Meet with financial advisor David Kwan, 11 a.m. appointment. 4. Transfer funds from joint checking to separate account. 5. Change passwords on all shared accounts. 6. Forward evidence to private investigator Sarah Mitchell. 7. Cancel Thursday's garden party. Venue, caterers, rentals. I got out of bed, showered, and dressed in my armor, a navy Armani pantsuit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a sleek, low bun. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked competent, professional, untouchable. She didn't look like someone whose husband had been cheating on her for 6 months with a woman young enough to be his daughter. Good. Downstairs, I found Jonathan's bed in the guest room already made, his overnight bag gone. A note sat on the kitchen counter, his handwriting rushed and messy. Went to Mom's. Need some time to think. We should talk when you're ready. Jay. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Then I made coffee, toasted a piece of sourdough bread, and sat at the kitchen island reviewing the documents Margaret Chen had sent over last night. The preliminary divorce filing was straightforward. Massachusetts was a no-fault state, which meant I didn't have to prove adultery to end the marriage, but I could use the affair as leverage in the asset division, especially given the financial infidelity. I was reviewing the section on separate versus marital property when my phone rang. Margaret Chen's name appeared on the screen. "Good morning, Emma," she said when I answered. Her voice was crisp and professional, with just enough warmth to remind you she was on your side. "I hope you slept well." "As well as could be expected," I said. "I've reviewed all the documents you sent over last night," Margaret said, "and I have to say, you've done an excellent job of protecting your assets throughout this marriage. The prenuptial agreement is airtight. The separate property classifications are clear. Frankly, this should be one of the most straightforward high net worth divorces I've handled in years." "That's good to hear," I said.
However, Margaret continued, I want to prepare you for the fact that Jonathan, or more likely his mother, may try to contest the prenup. They'll argue duress, lack of independent counsel, insufficient disclosure. It's standard procedure when one party realizes they're walking away with significantly less than they expected. Let them try. Jonathan had his own attorney review the prenup. He signed it willingly, and every financial disclosure was provided in writing months before the wedding. I know, Margaret said. I'm not worried. I just want you to be prepared for things to get ugly, especially with Patricia involved. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Patricia. Speaking of which, I said to Margaret, she's calling right now. Don't answer, Margaret advised. All communication should go through me from this point forward. You don't want to say anything that could be used against you later. Understood, I said. I let the call go to voicemail and returned my attention to Margaret. What about the credit card fraud? The purchases Jonathan made for Natalie? I'm working with a forensic accountant to document everything, Margaret said. The $2,847 at Saks is just the beginning. We're pulling records going back 6 months. Every dinner, every hotel, every gift. If Jonathan used any account with your name on it to fund this affair, we'll find it. And Patricia? I asked. The card was in her name. Can she claim she didn't know what she was buying? Margaret laughed, a sharp sound without humor. Handed your credit card to a sales associate to buy a Max Mara coat for your husband's mistress while he stood there watching. That's not accidental. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. Now, we probably won't pursue criminal charges. That's messy and expensive, and you don't strike me as someone who wants this in the papers, but it gives us leverage. Good, I said. How are you holding up? Margaret asked, and for the first time, her voice softened slightly. I looked around my kitchen, my beautiful, expensive kitchen with its marble counters and professional-grade appliances, and the faint ghost of flour still dusting the workspace where I'd been making an apple galette for people who didn't deserve it. I'm angry, I admitted, but I'm also relieved. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Margaret said. You're allowed to feel both. You're allowed to grieve the marriage you thought you had while also being furious about the marriage you actually had. We talked for a few more minutes about logistics, timelines, and strategy. By the time I hung up, my coffee was cold and my toast was untouched, but I felt armed, prepared, ready. My 11 a.m. meeting with David Kwan took place at his office in the financial district, a gleaming tower with views of Boston Harbor and security so tight you needed to show ID just to reach the elevator bank.
David was in his 50s, impeccably dressed, with silver hair and the kind of calm demeanor that came from managing billions of dollars in assets and never, ever panicking. "Emma," he said, standing to shake my hand when his assistant showed me into his corner office. "I'm so sorry about the circumstances, but I'm glad you called me." "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice," I said. "Of course." He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. "I've pulled all your accounts, personal, joint, and trust structures. Let me walk you through what we're looking at." He turned his monitor so I could see the spreadsheet displayed on the screen. It was color-coded, categorized, and utterly damning. Personal assets: Emma Hartley, separate property. Hedge fund ownership stake, $47.3 million. Investment portfolio, premarital, $8.2 million. Brownstone property, purchased 2015, $3.8 million. Cash reserves, $2.1 million. Retirement accounts, $1.9 million. Total, $63.3 million. Joint assets, marital property, subject to division. Joint checking account, $47,000. Joint savings account, $12,000. Total, $59,000. Jonathan's separate assets, 401k from law firm, $143,000. Personal checking account, $8,400. 2019 BMW, lease not owned, $0. Total, $151,400. I stared at the numbers, a cold sense of vindication settling in my chest. $63 million versus $151,000, I said quietly. Roughly, David confirmed, and that's before we factor in the prenuptial agreement, which explicitly states that all separate property remains separate in the event of divorce, and that marital property is divided based on actual contribution rather than automatic 50-50 split. And my contributions to the marriage? David clicked to another tab, this one showing a detailed breakdown of expenses over the past 7 years. You've paid 97% of all household expenses: mortgage, property taxes, utilities, insurance, food, maintenance, staff salaries. Jonathan's salary covered roughly 3%, basically his personal spending money and his contribution to the joint checking account, which he consistently underfunded. He scrolled down further. You also paid for both vehicles, all vacations, all entertainment, all gifts, including gifts he gave to his mother and apparently his mistress. And the monthly payments to Patricia? I asked. Classified as gifts from you to her, not marital expenses. Jonathan never contributed to his mother's support financially. You've been paying her approximately $6,500 per month for the past 7 years. That's $546,000, none of which is recoverable. The number should have shocked me. Instead, it just felt like confirmation of what I'd already known. What about the Hartley family trust he always mentioned? I asked. David's expression turned almost sympathetic. There is no trust. Or rather, there was a trust established by Jonathan's grandfather in 1962, but it was dissolved in 2003 to pay off debts from his father's failed business ventures. Jonathan inherited approximately $47,000 when his father died, which he spent within 6 months.
So it had all been a lie. The prestigious family, the old money, the Hartley legacy, all of it, smoke and mirrors and my money. What's my next move? I asked. We separate everything that's not already separate, David said. We'll close the joint accounts and divide them according to actual contribution, which means you'll get about $57,000 and he'll get about $2,000. We'll terminate any automatic payments you've been making to third parties on his behalf, and we'll make sure that every asset you brought into this marriage stays with you when you leave. And Patricia's allowance ends immediately, David said firmly. You have no legal obligation to support your ex-mother-in-law. The payments stop the day the divorce is filed. I nodded slowly, feeling the pieces fall into place. Do it, I said. All of it, today. David made a note on his legal pad. Consider it done. I'll have the paperwork ready by end of business today. As I stood to leave, David looked up at me with something that might have been respect. For what it's worth, Emma, he said, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen a lot of divorces, a lot of betrayals, a lot of people who wait too long to protect themselves. You're handling this exactly right. Thank you, I said. But as I walked out of his office and into the crisp autumn air, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Tired of being the bank, tired of being taken for granted, tired of funding a fantasy life for people who saw me as nothing more than a convenient source of cash. But I wasn't tired enough to stop. Not yet. The private investigator's office was nothing like I expected. Sarah Mitchell worked out of a converted warehouse in Cambridge, in a building that housed artists' studios, a yoga collective, and a vintage furniture restoration business. Her door had a simple brass nameplate, Mitchell Investigations, by appointment only. I knocked at exactly 2 p.m. Come in, a voice called. Sarah Mitchell was not what I expected. She was in her late 40s, with short silver hair, wire-ringed glasses, and the no-nonsense demeanor of a former cop. Her office was tidy but lived in, with file cabinets lining one wall and a desk covered with monitors, cameras, and recording equipment. Mrs. Hartley, she said, standing to shake my hand. Have a seat. Can I get you coffee? Water? Water would be great, I said. She pulled a bottle from a mini fridge and handed it to me before settling back behind her desk. So,
she said, pulling out a legal pad. Your attorney gave me a brief overview, but I'd like to hear it from you. What exactly are we dealing with? I told her everything. The discovery at Saks, the location tracking, the shopping trip with Patricia and Natalie, the 6 or 7 months of affair that Jonathan had admitted to. Sarah took notes, asking occasional clarifying questions, her expression neutral and professional. When I finished, she set down her pen. Okay, she said, here's what I can do for you. I can confirm the affair. Timeline, frequency, locations. I can document any financial transactions related to the affair. I can identify the other woman, find out who she is, where she works, how they met, and I can surveil both Jonathan and Patricia to see if there are any other surprises we should know about. Other surprises? I asked. In my experience, Sarah said carefully, when someone's been cheating for 6 months and their mother is actively helping them hide it, there are usually layers to the deception. Other women, other expenses, other lies. My stomach turned. How long will this take? I asked. 2 weeks for a basic workup, Sarah said. I'll start with digital forensics, phone records, email accounts, social media. Then I'll move to physical surveillance. By the end of the month, you'll have a complete picture. And if I find out there's more than just Natalie? I asked quietly. Sarah looked at me with sympathy that felt earned, not pitying. Then you'll know the truth, she said simply, and you can make decisions based on reality instead of whatever story they've been selling you. I signed her contract, wrote her a check for the retainer, and left her office feeling like I'd just hired an exorcist, because that's what this was, really, an exorcism of the lies, the illusions, the fantasy that I'd been living in for 7 years. By the time I got home, it was nearly 4 p.m. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but there was one more thing I needed to do. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. Call number 1, the caterer. Hi, this is Emma Hartley. I need to cancel the order for Thursday's event. Yes, the garden party. I understand there's a cancellation fee. That's fine. Please send the invoice to my attorney. Call number 2, the tent rental company. Hello, I'm calling to cancel the tent and furniture rental for Thursday. Yes, I know it's last minute. Yes, I'll pay the cancellation fee. Please send the invoice to my attorney. Call number 3, the florist. Hi, this is Emma Hartley. I need to cancel the floral arrangements for the garden party on Thursday. I understand. Yes, I'll pay for the materials already purchased. Send the invoice to my attorney. Call number 4, the valet service. This is Emma Hartley. I'm calling to cancel the valet parking for Thursday evening. Yes, I understand. Send the invoice to my attorney. With each call, I felt lighter. By the time I finished the last call, the sun was setting over Boston, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I poured myself a glass of wine, walked out to the garden where Patricia's party was supposed to happen, and sat on the stone bench beneath the oak tree. My phone buzzed. A text from Jonathan. Mom says you canceled the party. Emma, that's cruel. Those women have been planning to attend for weeks. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed my response. Patricia can host her own parties. I'm done funding her social calendar. His response came immediately. We need to talk about this like adults. I laughed, a sound without humor, and typed, all communication goes through my attorney, Margaret Chen. You have her card. Then I blocked his number. The silence that followed was beautiful. I sat in my garden, sipping wine, watching the sky darken, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt like I could breathe. Thursday morning arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of Boston autumn day that made you want to stay in bed with a book and a cup of tea. It was also the day Patricia's garden party had been scheduled, the day that 47 women from her bridge club, her charity boards, and her social circle were supposed to arrive at my brownstone for champagne, canapes, and an afternoon of gossip dressed up as philanthropy. Instead, I was sitting in my kitchen in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Margaret had advised me not to interact with Jonathan or Patricia without counsel present, and Sarah Mitchell wasn't due to check in with her first surveillance report until tomorrow. I walked to the door and checked the camera feed from the Ring doorbell. Patricia stood on my front steps, dressed for the party that wasn't happening. She wore a rose-colored dress, pearls, full makeup, and an expression that could have curdled milk. I seriously considered not answering, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "Patricia," I said neutrally. "Emma," her voice was ice. "We need to talk. All communication should go through my attorney. I am not communicating through some lawyer," Patricia snapped, her composure cracking. "You've humiliated me. You've canceled a party that I've been planning for months. You've cut off my credit cards without warning, and apparently you've told David Kwan to stop my monthly allowance. I want an explanation, now." I leaned against the doorframe, not moving aside to let her enter. "I found out my husband has been cheating on me," I said calmly, "with your knowledge and participation. That seems like sufficient explanation for all of the above." Her face flushed. "That's between you and Jonathan." "No, it stopped being between me and Jonathan the moment you took his mistress shopping with my credit card, the moment you called her part of the family, the moment you actively facilitated his affair instead of telling him to stop." "You don't understand," Patricia said, and I heard something desperate creeping into her voice. "Natalie is good for him. She understands his needs. She doesn't make him feel inadequate like you do with your career and your money." "My money," I repeated softly. "That's the part you keep forgetting, isn't it? It's not Hartley money, it's not Jonathan's money, it's mine, and I'm done sharing it with people who treat me like an ATM. You owe us," Patricia hissed, stepping closer. "You owe this family. Do you think you'd have the social connections you have without the Hartley name? Do you think those charity boards would have accepted you, a girl from a state school with no pedigree, if you hadn't married Jonathan?" I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. "First of all," I said, my voice deadly calm, "I went to MIT. And second, I don't care about your charity boards or your social connections or your pedigree. I never did. I cared about being part of a family, about building a life with someone I loved. But you and Jonathan made it very clear that I was never family. I was funding." Patricia's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "The monthly allowance is over," I continued. "The credit cards are canceled. The party is canceled. And in approximately 2 weeks, when the divorce is finalized, any association you have with me ends permanently." "You can't do this," Patricia whispered. "I don't care what you need," I said, and I meant it. "For 7 years, I've cared what you need. I've accommodated your demands, funded your lifestyle, smiled through your insults. But you made your choice when you chose to help Jonathan betray me. Now you live with the consequences." "The country club is your problem now," I said. "You have until the end of the month to pay your outstanding balance. After that, they'll suspend your membership and you can explain to Francine and Louise and dreadful Barbara why you can no longer host bridge games." Her face had gone pale, and for the first time since I'd known her, Patricia Hartley looked genuinely frightened. "Please," she said, and the words sounded foreign in her mouth. "Emma, please, I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking." "You were thinking," I corrected. "You were thinking that I'd never find out, or that if I did find out, I'd be too weak or too desperate for your approval to do anything about it. You were wrong." I stepped back and put my hand on the door. "Goodbye, Patricia." "Wait!" I closed the door in her face and locked it. Through the window, I watched her stand there for a long moment, her perfect posture finally crumbling. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Then she turned and walked down the steps to the street, where a taxi was waiting. Not a private car service, not Stephen with the town car, a taxi. I watched until she was gone, then I walked back to the kitchen, refilled my coffee, and sat down at the island. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Francine Caldwell. I'm hearing disturbing rumors about Thursday's party. Can you clarify?" I deleted it. Another text came through, this time from a number saved as Louise Bridge Club. Patricia just called me in tears, saying the party is canceled. What's going on? I deleted that one too. Then I went into my phone settings and activated Do Not Disturb for everyone except Margaret, David, and Sarah. Let them wonder. Let them gossip. Let Patricia explain to her social circle why she suddenly couldn't afford to maintain the lifestyle she'd been parading for years. I was done managing other people's images. Hey everyone, if you're loving the way Emma is handling this situation, please show some love by hitting that like button. And I'd love to know, where are you all watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. Your support means everything and helps this channel grow. Now, let's see what happens when Sarah Mitchell delivers her first report. Sarah Mitchell's first report arrived via encrypted email on Friday afternoon, exactly 1 week after I'd discovered Jonathan's affair. I was working from home. I'd taken the week off from the hedge fund, citing personal matters, and my COO had assured me everything was running smoothly without me. The subject line was simple. Initial findings, Hartley investigation. I poured myself a glass of wine even though it was only 3 p.m., sat down at my desk, and opened the attachment. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Surveillance report number 1. Subject, Jonathan Hartley. Duration, October 14th to 20th, 2023. Investigator, S. Mitchell. Summary of findings. Subject maintains relationship with primary person of interest, Natalie Cole, age 26, paralegal at Brennan and Associates. Surveillance confirms ongoing affair with regular pattern. Monday evenings. Subject leaves office at approximately 7:30 p.m., meets Natalie Cole at her apartment, 142 Newbury Street, Apt 4B, departs between 10 and 11 p.m. Wednesday lunches. Subject meets Natalie Cole at various restaurants. See attached receipts. Duration typically 2 to 3 hours. Friday afternoons. Subject and Natalie Cole meet at the Ritz-Carlton, Boston, room 847, booked under subject's corporate account. Financial documentation. Analysis of subject's credit card statements shows pattern of purchases consistent with affair dating back 11 months, not 6 or 7 as subject claimed. Restaurants, $14,847. Hotels, $22,400. Gifts, jewelry, clothing, etc., $31,200. Total documented spending, $68,447. All charges made to credit cards linked to primary account holder, Emma Hartley. I stopped reading and took a large sip of wine. 11 months, not 6 or 7, almost a full year of lying. I forced myself to continue reading. Additional findings. Secondary person of interest identified. Jennifer Park, age 29, marketing director at subject's law firm. Surveillance captured subject and Jennifer Park having dinner at Mistress on October 16th. Physical contact observed, hand-holding, kissing. Subject departed with Jennifer Park at approximately 10 p.m., entered her residence, 223 Commonwealth Avenue, Apt 2C, departed at 1:30 a.m. Phone records analysis suggests regular contact with Jennifer Park, dating back approximately 4 months. Preliminary assessment. Subject appears to be conducting simultaneous affairs with at least 2 women. Possible pattern of serial infidelity. The wine glass trembled in my hand. 2 women at the same time, while I was making apple galettes and hosting his mother and paying for everything? I scrolled down to the photographs attached to the report. There was Jonathan, clear as day, holding hands with Natalie outside a restaurant. Jonathan kissing a different woman, Jennifer Park, I assumed, on a street corner. Jonathan entering the Ritz-Carlton with Natalie, his hand on the small of her back. Jonathan leaving Jennifer Park's apartment in the early morning hours, his tie loose, his hair disheveled. And then, at the bottom of the report, there was one more photograph that made my blood run cold. It was dated October 18th, 2 days ago.
The location was tagged as the Four Seasons Boston. In the photograph, Jonathan sat at a hotel bar with Patricia, and across from them sat a young woman I didn't recognize. She was blonde, professionally dressed, probably in her early 30s. The caption beneath the photo read, "Subjects, J. Hartley and P. Hartley, meeting with unidentified female at Four Seasons. Duration of meeting, 47 minutes."
Subject J. Hartley paid bar tab, $247, and departed with unidentified female at 9:23 p.m. P. Hartley departed separately. I set down the wine glass before I could drop it. Patricia was helping him meet women, actively participating in setting up affairs. My mother-in-law wasn't just enabling Jonathan's cheating, she was facilitating it. I picked up my phone and called Sarah Mitchell directly. She answered on the second ring. "Emma, I assume you got the report?" "The woman at the Four Seasons," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Who is she?" "I'm still working on identification," Sarah said, "but based on the interaction, it appears to be an introduction. Someone Patricia knows, possibly setting Jonathan up with another potential relationship." "She's matchmaking," I said, flatly. "My mother-in-law is running a matchmaking service for my husband's affairs." "It appears that way," Sarah confirmed. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "How many?" I asked, quietly. "How many women do you think there have been?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I can't say for certain without more time, but based on the patterns I'm seeing, the comfort level both Jonathan and Patricia display, the established routines, this isn't his first affair. Or his second." "Best estimate," I pressed. "If I had to guess," Sarah said carefully, "based on 20 years of doing this work, I'd say this has been going on throughout your entire marriage. The specific women change, but the behavior is consistent." 7 years. He'd been cheating on me for 7 years. "I want everything," I said, my voice hard. "Every woman, every hotel, every restaurant, every lie. I want a complete timeline from the day we got married until now." "That's going to take time and money," Sarah warned. "I don't care," I said. "I want to know exactly what I've been funding all these years, and I want evidence so airtight that even the best divorce attorney in Boston won't be able to spin it." "You'll have it," Sarah promised. After I hung up, I sat at my desk for a long time staring at the photographs. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a pattern, a lifestyle, a fundamental betrayal that had been woven into the fabric of our entire marriage. And Patricia had known, had helped, had actively recruited women for her son to cheat with. I opened my laptop and pulled up the email to Margaret Chen. Subject: New evidence. Margaret, please see attached surveillance report from Sarah Mitchell. We need to discuss escalation strategy immediately. Key points: multiple ongoing affairs, minimum of 2, possibly more. Pattern dating back potentially through entire marriage. Mother-in-law actively facilitating introductions. Total documented affair-related spending, $68,447 plus. All on my accounts. I want to file for divorce immediately, and I want to pursue fraud charges for unauthorized use of my accounts. Call me when you get this. Emma. I hit send and closed the laptop. Then I did something I'd been avoiding all week. I called my best friend, Sophie, who I'd been dodging since this all started because I couldn't bear to say the words out loud. She answered on the first ring. "Emma, finally. I've been so worried. Jonathan's been cheating on me. Multiple women, for years. His mother's been helping, and I've been paying for all of it." Silence. Then, "I'm coming over. Open a bottle of wine. Actually, open 2 bottles. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up before I could respond. 23 minutes later, my doorbell rang. Sophie stood on my doorstep with 3 bottles of wine, a bag of Thai takeout, and a look of pure fury on her face. "Okay," she said, pushing past me into the house. "Tell me everything, and I mean everything, because I have some thoughts on how we're going to destroy these people." I started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound that might have been partially crying. "Get in line," I said. "I've already hired a team."
We spent the next 4 hours sitting on my living room floor, surrounded by wine bottles and Taipei containers, while I told her every detail. Sophie was a corporate litigator, sharp, strategic, and absolutely ruthless when someone she loved was hurt. By the time I finished the story, she was pacing back and forth, her mind clearly working through scenarios. "Okay," she said finally, "here's what we're going to do. We're going to take everything, the house, the money, the reputation. We're going to make sure everyone who matters knows exactly who Jonathan Hartley really is. And we're going to make sure Patricia spends the rest of her life explaining to her bridge club why she helped her son betray her wife." "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. "I just want out." Sophie stopped pacing and looked at me. "Emma, this isn't about revenge. This is about justice, about making sure they can't do this to someone else, about making sure every single person who enabled this, who looked the other way, who benefited from your generosity while treating you like garbage, about making sure they all understand there are consequences." She sat down next to me and put her hand on mine. "You've spent 7 years being accommodating," she said gently, "being the bigger person, making excuses for them. It's time to be the person who says enough." I looked at her, this friend who'd known me since college, who'd been skeptical of Jonathan from the beginning, who'd bitten her tongue for 7 years while watching me slowly disappear into the role of Mrs. Hartley. "You're right," I said. "I know," she replied. "Now, do you have any ice cream? Because we're going to need ice cream for phase 2 of this plan." We raided my freezer, found a pint of expensive gelato that Jonathan liked, and ate it straight from the container while planning the complete and total dismantling of the Hartley family's social standing. It felt good. It felt like the beginning of something. Not revenge, justice.
Margaret Chen filed the divorce papers on Monday morning at 9:01 a.m. By 9:15 a.m., my phone started ringing. By 10 a.m., I had 17 voicemails, 23 text messages, and 6 emails, all from Jonathan, Patricia, or their newly hired attorney. I ignored all of them and went to my office at the hedge fund for the first time in 2 weeks. My assistant, Jennifer, not to be confused with Jennifer Park, the marketing director Jonathan was sleeping with, greeted me with obvious relief. "Emma, thank God you're back. We've missed you. How are you doing?" I gave her the sanitized version. "Going through a divorce. It's amicable. I'm fine." She looked skeptical, but didn't push. The truth was, I wasn't fine, but I was functional, which was good enough. I threw myself into work, reviewing portfolio performance, meeting with investors, analyzing market trends. For 8 blessed hours, I didn't think about Jonathan or Natalie or Jennifer Park or the unnamed blonde at the Four Seasons. I just thought about numbers. Numbers made sense. Numbers didn't lie. Numbers didn't cheat. At 5 p.m., Margaret called. "They want to meet," she said without preamble. "Who does?" "Jonathan's attorney, Gerald Berkshire. He's old-school Boston, works with a lot of old money families, very good at protecting generational wealth." "Except there is no generational wealth," I pointed out. "Exactly," Margaret said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Which is why this should be entertaining. They want to schedule a meeting to discuss settlement parameters. Translation, they've realized how badly this could go for them, and they want to negotiate before discovery gets ugly." "How fast can we schedule it?" I asked. "Is Thursday too soon?" "Thursday is perfect." Thursday's meeting took place in a conference room at Margaret's law firm, a glass and steel tower overlooking Boston Common. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a black Armani suit with my hair pulled back severely and minimal makeup. I looked like exactly what I was, a woman who owned a hedge fund and had no time for bullshit. Margaret met me in the lobby. "Jonathan and his attorney are already here. Patricia tried to come, but I shut that down immediately. This is between spouses, not mother-in-laws." "Good," I said. We took the elevator to the 14th floor and walked into a conference room that could have seated 20 people, but today held only 5. Me, Margaret, Jonathan, his attorney, Gerald Berkshire, exactly as pretentious-looking as I'd imagined, and a court reporter. Jonathan looked terrible. He'd lost weight, his suit hung loose on his frame, and he had dark circles under his eyes. "Good."
I sat down across from him and didn't smile. Gerald Berkshire cleared his throat and began his opening statement, a long-winded speech about preserving the dignity of both parties and reaching an amicable resolution. Margaret let him talk for exactly 3 minutes before interrupting. "Let me save us all some time," she said, sliding a document across the table. "Here's what we're asking for. 1. Complete dissolution of marriage with no spousal support in either direction. 2. All separate property, which includes the brownstone, all investment accounts, all business interests, remains with Emma. 3. Division of joint marital assets based on proportional contribution, which, per our documentation, means Emma receives 97% of joint accounts. 4. Jonathan assumes all personal debt, including the balance on his corporate credit card. 5. Jonathan returns all property purchased with Emma's funds during the course of the marriage." Gerald Berkshire's face turned red. "That's absurd. Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state." "Equitable," Margaret interrupted, "not equal. And given the circumstances," she slid another document across the table, "I think you'll find our position more than fair." Gerald picked up the document. It was the surveillance report from Sarah Mitchell, complete with photographs and financial documentation. I watched Jonathan's face as his attorney read it. He went pale, then red, then pale again. This is, Gerald stammered, "evidence of adultery and financial fraud, multiple concurrent affairs, 11 months of documented infidelity, $68,447 in unauthorized charges to Emma's accounts. We're being generous by not pursuing criminal charges." "Criminal charges?" Gerald repeated weakly. "Jonathan used Emma's credit cards without permission to fund extramarital affairs. That's fraud. Identity theft. We have dates, receipts, and witnesses. We could make this very public, very messy, very embarrassing for everyone involved." She leaned forward. "Or," she said softly, "Jonathan can sign the settlement agreement, accept the very generous terms Emma is offering, and we can all move on with our lives quietly." Jonathan and his attorney had a whispered conversation. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see Jonathan's face crumbling as his attorney explained exactly how screwed he was. Finally, Gerald cleared his throat. "We'd like to request a brief recess to discuss—" "No," I said. Everyone looked at me. "No," I repeated, speaking directly to Jonathan for the first time. "You don't get to take time to think about this. You don't get to strategize or call your mother or figure out how to spin this. You made your choices over the past 11 months, or longer, who knows. This is my choice. Sign the agreement or don't, but if you don't, I promise you, every detail of what you've done will be public knowledge by the end of the week." Jonathan stared at me. "Emma, please." "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't say my name like we're still married, like you ever respected this marriage. Just sign the papers and let me move on." He looked like he might cry. Instead, he picked up the pen and signed. The divorce was finalized 30 days later, on a gray November morning that matched my mood perfectly. I sat in the courtroom, a small antiseptic room that smelled of old paper and broken promises, while a judge I'd never met officially ended my 7-year marriage in less than 15 minutes. The court finds that the marriage between Emma Hartley and Jonathan Hartley is irretrievably broken. The divorce is granted. All assets shall be distributed as outlined in the settlement agreement. Both parties are free to remarry. This court is adjourned. A gavel struck wood, and just like that, I wasn't Mrs. Hartley anymore. I stood up, shook Margaret's hand, and walked out of the courthouse into the cold November air. Jonathan was standing on the steps, looking lost. I walked past him without a word. "Emma, wait," he called. I stopped. I didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, but I really am sorry." I turned to look at him. He looked broken, diminished. "I'm sorry too," I said honestly. "I'm sorry I wasted 7 years on someone who never deserved them." Then I walked down the steps to where Sophie was waiting with my car.
"How do you feel?" she asked as I got in. I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Free," I said finally. "I feel free." The thing about social circles built on money and status is that they collapse spectacularly when the money disappears. Patricia Hartley discovered this exactly 6 weeks after my divorce was finalized. I heard about it from Francine Caldwell, of all people, Patricia's former bridge club friend who'd sent me that text asking about the canceled garden party. She called me on a Tuesday afternoon. "Emma, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I just wanted to reach out and see how you're doing. I heard about the divorce. Such a shame." "Thank you for your concern," I said, neutrally. "Yes, well, I also wanted to apologize. Patricia told us that you had, well, she implied that you were the one who'd been unfaithful, that you'd left poor Jonathan for your career. Of course, now that the truth is coming out, well, we all feel rather foolish for believing her." I sat up straighter. "The truth is coming out? Oh, you didn't hear?" Francine sounded delighted to be the one delivering gossip. "Patricia's membership at the country club was revoked last week, unpaid dues going back 4 months. She caused quite a scene, actually, accused the club manager of discrimination, had to be escorted out by security." I closed my eyes, simultaneously satisfied and sad. "And I heard from Louise," Francine continued, "that Patricia's been asking around for loans, small amounts mostly, a few thousand here and there. She claims it's just a temporary cash flow issue while she waits for some sort of trust to mature. But we all know now that there is no trust." "Is there?" "No," I confirmed, "there isn't." "I also heard," Francine said, lowering her voice conspiratorially, "that she's had to sell her Beacon Hill condo, moving to some apartment in, where was it? Malden, Medford, one of those places." Malden, a perfectly nice working-class suburb that Patricia would have considered beneath her. "Thank you for letting me know, Francine," I said. "Of course, dear. And Emma, for what it's worth, you're better off without them. The Hartley family always did put on airs they couldn't afford." After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time processing the information. I'd known Patricia would struggle financially without my support. I'd known the country club fees would be impossible for her to maintain. I'd known that eventually reality would catch up with the fantasy she'd been living. But knowing it intellectually was different from hearing about her being escorted out by security, about her begging friends for loans, about her having to sell her home. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Emma, this is Patricia. I know we didn't part on good terms, but I'm asking you to reconsider. I made a mistake. I know that now. But I'm desperate. I have nowhere else to turn. Please." I stared at the message for a long time. 7 years ago, I would have immediately sent her money, would have felt guilty for causing her hardship, would have resumed the monthly allowance out of misplaced obligation. But I wasn't that person anymore. I typed a response. "Patricia, I'm sorry you're struggling, but the choices that led you here were yours, not mine. I wish you the best, but I can't help you." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Her response came within seconds. "You're cruel. Jonathan was right about you. You only care about money. You have no compassion." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Then I blocked her number and deleted the conversation.